This video is brought to you by HalloCasa. Our tool transforms independent local real estate agents to global real estate agents. Create your own profile for free and get contacted by international investors. Sign up with the link in the description. Hello and welcome everyone to a 227th session of HalloCasa. My name is Michael and today I'm talking to Paulo Barros Trindade. Paulo is the CEO of TERRAVAL, Valuation, and chairman of TEGOVA. With nearly 30 years of experience in real estate and business valuation, he also holds leadership roles in ASAVAL and several other organizations, and he has been shaping valuation education and standards across Portugal and Europe. Paulo, thank you so much for your time to join me on the podcast and give us a great idea and insights on the valuation profession in general, the markets, and also about TEGOVA and TERRAVAL.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Michael. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here and to speak a little bit about valuation. I think that this month I'm doing 31 years of career working in valuation. I didn't choose this profession. I think that the profession chose me because after I finished my degree in university, I had the opportunity to start working in expropriation. I've started working in this area, and 31 years later, I'm still working as a valuer. What can I say about Val? TEGOVA, in this moment, I'm the chairman of TEGOVA. So TEGOVA is the European Group of Valuers Associations. So represent 77 associations from 42 countries, mainly European countries. And we represent more than 70,000 valuers. So it's a very big, let's say, family. The main objective of TEGOVA is to do the European valuation standards. We produce and we edit the European valuation standards. And since the beginning of this year, that we have new standards, EVS 2025, effective since 1 of January. And we are already working on the next version. Probably it will be 2028. So this is one of our main goals, to harmonize valuation standards. And a very important thing also, we want to be, and we are, the standards for European valuers. So we are in lockstep with European legislation and all the regulation. And that's something that distinguishes from other standard setters. In TEGOVA, we have also the recognitions. We do the accreditation of valuers. So we have something that's called the Recognized European Valuer. So we recognize skills and we recognize valuers that apply AVS, the European valuation standards. So this is a way for valuers in Europe to distinguish among each other and to present to the clients an accreditation that is linked with a quality brand. So this is a very important part of what we do also in TEGOVA. But not just this, we are present in conferences all across Europe, and we try to be close to valuers in all of the countries where we have intervention. We try to have a strategy to be close to valuers, to let them know the European valuation standards, and also to clients. So this is one of our main objectives. And of course, we try to have a direct relation with European institutions, and we try to have some influence also over all the regulation that directly or indirectly is produced at the European level, and it somehow affects valuers. In a very resumed way, this is what we do in TEGOVA. In TERRAVAL is a valuation company, is one of the main valuation companies in Portugal. We are turning this year 28 years of activity, and we are very transversal. So we are doing real estate valuation, business valuation, and equipment, plant machinery and equipment valuation. We have activity not just in Portugal, but we also have activity in Romania in these last 18 years, and also in the former colonies, Portuguese colonies like Mozambique, Angola, Cape Verde. We have activity in on those countries, and in Spain. About ASAVAL. ASAVAL is the association of companies, valuation companies of Portugal. So I was the chairman of ASAVAL for 6 years. In this moment, I'm the chairman of the General Assembly, but I've been connected with ASAVAL and for the last 11 years. And so what we tried to do with ASAVAL was to organize the valuers, and not just the valuation companies, but also the valuers working with these valuation companies, especially for the financial sector, and try to introduce the European valuation standards in Portugal, something that we succeeded. And the role of ASAVAL in this moment is more or less the same as what we are doing in Portugal is the same that TEGOVA is doing at the European level. So more or less it's the same kind of objectives.
Guide us maybe through the scope of how you certify and how you ensure the high quality so that it's also coherent, because we need coherence and we need certain standards. And what are some examples? Obviously, it is vast. It is very detailed, I assume. Is it a checklist? And it's probably also like on-site elements in order to make sure that we meet the highest quality standards.
To become an REV, a recognized European valuer, you need to go through a process that changes from country to country, but in general it's a two-step process. In the first step, you need to do an exam, and this exam is based on your knowledge of the European valuation standards and also based on your knowledge about the valuation methodologies. When you pass this first step, you enter in the second step, and the second step is usually an interview with the jury. In Portugal, I think the system that we have is a 3-member jury, mainly academics, people that are teaching this kind of profession in the university. And you do an interview with this jury defending 2 practical cases. So you present 2 valuation reports that you have done and where you use the European valuation standards. So 2 reports in compliance with the European valuation standards, and you need to defend them technically and also proving the compliance with European valuation standards. I can say to you that this is not an easy process, but because we are aiming for the most skilled valuers. So for us, REV is like the elite of valuers in Europe. So we demand really a lot from these valuers to achieve this kind of accreditation. Just for a better understanding, you need to prove your skills, your experience and your skills in valuation. You need to prove the compliance with the EVS, the European Valuation Standards, and you need to fulfill the requirements that we have in the European Valuation Standards concerning the minimum educational requirements. So you need some educational requirements, some kind of a degree related with this profession, a postgraduate course or a master or something related with this profession. You need to fulfill these minimum education requirements that are also part of the European Valuation Standards. So those 3 together, skills, compliance, and minimum educational requirements, fulfilling the minimum education requirements, all the 3 together, it makes what you can become an REV if you comply with all this. And the system can change from one country to another, the way that we do the exam or the way we do the interview, but more or less we are following the same kind of demand from the candidates to REV. And so this is very important that when you hire an REV valuer in Portugal, or you hire in France, or you hire in Germany, you know what you are getting, because you know that they have the same kind of skills, they are in compliance with EVS, and they have the minimum education requirements. The profession, and this is something that it's quite important for clients.
And before our call, I had a look on the website, and I see there are also even members from outside the European Union, UAE, South America, so you can even hold and become member when you're not within the European Union.
Yes, we have a different status for one status for the members of the European Union, other for non-members of the European Union, but European countries, and other status for outside Europe. But we have some members that are from other countries. We have members from Argentina, from the United States, from Canada, from the Emirates. But our principle is all the countries that have relations with the countries of the European Union can join us and they can be members of TEGOVA. And this is very important because from time to time we invite members of these countries to do presentations in our general assemblies, because it's quite important to understand what they are doing in the other side of the Atlantic, for instance, and is a way to exchange knowledge. So this is also a very important part of TEGOVA, the fact that we don't stay closed in Europe, that we have open doors also for other countries.
Now, with all your experience of 30 years, how has the field of property and business valuation evolved?
In Portugal, I remember 31 years ago when I started that we were doing reports by hand. So today we have all these AI tools to help us with artificial intelligence and everything. So it's completely different. It evolved in a way that it's unbelievable. And it was all in this period. So I was lucky because it was all in my lifetime. It was all in this period that I've been working in valuation. And in the beginning of my career, the valuers were a very restricted group. I don't know how many at the time, but probably just a couple of hundred valuers in Portugal. Today you have almost 2,000 valuers, so it increased a lot the profession, and this is related especially with the increase that you had on the need of mortgage valuation, because this increased, and the banking sector continues to be one of our main clients in Portugal. So we developed a lot. And I saw this development also in other countries, for instance, in the Eastern countries. When we started working in Romania, it was 2008, I think, the first year that we started working there. And since then, the evolution that they had it's huge, because we have been developing methodologies, we have been improving methodologies. The standards were very important for this, because in these last 30 years, we started applying the standards, and this was a way to develop a lot the valuation profession in the European countries. And now in these last, let's say, 10 years, the introduction of evaluation was another huge step to develop the profession. I was lucky to watch all this happen during these 3 decades, because we went from the pen to now to all the automatic processes and all the AVMs and everything. So it has been a big evolution.
And now you also mentioned recently in one of your LinkedIn posts that there's also the element of uncertainty also looking forward, and say it's this, yes, we're trying to be like super data driven and everything has to be certain and it's clear and it's binary, but there's also this element of uncertainty. Where do you think fits this into the profession of valuer, and maybe also the importance of awareness towards banks and mortgage lenders?
This uncertainty is now a part of our context in a day-by-day basis. So we have war, we have the problems with immigration, we are facing all the changes concerning technology. We have climate change also affecting valuation. All this uncertainty that we are living is affecting the way that we look to valuation, especially when we are doing a valuation. We are using a basis like market value. We are doing a spot value. We are doing evaluation and achieving a value for that moment, for that date. But for investors in this moment, it's very important for them to understand what they can expect for the next few years or the next decade concerning the evolution of the value of the property that they are investing in. So this is becoming more and more important to give also this perspective of how the value can evolve. And a lot of investors are in this moment asking us not just the market value, so the spot value, but also to give them a perspective how we think the value will evolve. Of course, it's impossible to do a very complete forecast about what will happen, because in these moments we don't know. That's the problem of uncertainty. Probably before the financial crisis, we were all thinking about the sky is blue and everything is fantastic and the prices will continue to grow. But after the financial crisis, I think that we've learned that something bad can happen. And so this thing of the uncertainty became a big part of what we are doing in valuation today. I can give you an example. For instance, even the valuation for mortgage purposes changed a lot. In this moment, the banks in the European Union are demanding something that they call property value, a value that can be sustainable over time, over the time of the loan. So even the banking sector is looking to this uncertainty and wants to incorporate somehow this uncertainty in the valuations. So that's why they are requesting this new value. Market value is no longer just the only value that investors and banks want to know. They want to know also something that we call prudent value. They want to incorporate this uncertainty also in the valuation.
For the clarification, and I think there's this one framework which is called like PEST, like political, economic, social, technological, and legal and environmental, which I used to have to apply myself for doing like risk assessment for doing business in certain countries. So it goes like into more like geopolitical elements and saying, okay, is that actually the entire environment we are doing business in, is that actually stable, and how much of risk exposure do we have, so that we don't only take into consideration the unit of assessment in its singularity in an isolated way, but we understand more the complexities and can contextualize it around those elements which are putting a certain force onto the unit at hand, which we are right now appraising.
That is quite important when we are doing business valuation. It's also important for real estate, of course, as I was saying, but for business valuation, it's quite important because when you buy a business and you want to know the value of your business, you need to forecast at least 10 years to see what can happen in 10 years. And with all this uncertainty that we have in this moment, with all these factors that can affect the business, where some are more affected than others, but we need somehow to incorporate this in our valuations. So we incorporate it through risk, but not only to risk, something that we are starting to do also this in the business valuation, not just giving market value of the business, but also presenting different scenarios. If this happens, there is some probability to happen, the value can be this. So we consider different weights for different scenarios, and the value of the business is the result of those different weights for each scenario. This is a methodology that we have been using in these last few years, and it's a way to introduce all these factors and all this uncertainty that affects especially business valuation.
Before you mentioned climate impact and climate change, where do we stand right now on a European level regarding ESG? We know that there was a huge trend, especially during the Obama administration. And now with Trump, it has slowed down, I would say. I don't know if it even changed course. I'm not on top of that there. So do you see any trends in any direction there regarding ESG elements?
I think that's 2 years ago. Everybody wanted to implement ESG very fast, and I think it was too fast. I think that now in Europe, things didn't change much. ESG is still very important, and people are sensitive, the markets are sensitive to the ESG factors. But I think that the incorporation of these factors in valuation is now a gradual process. It's not something that we are rushing into it. We are studying the best way to incorporate these ESG factors. In some countries, this is already a reality, and they are incorporating ESG. For instance, Italy, they developed a lot of very interesting systems to incorporate ESG factors in valuation because the market is already sensitive to it. In France, the same. But for instance, in countries like Portugal and Spain, the markets are not so sensitive to this kind of factors. And we are incorporating some information related with ESG factors in valuation. But since the market is not yet responding considerably to these kind of factors, they are not affecting directly the value of the properties. Of course, this is different when you think about business valuation or real estate valuation, because for business valuation, the three criteria, environmental, social, and governance, are important, and they can affect the value of the asset of the company. For real estate valuation, in most countries, is not like that. So the most important part of the ESG factors are the environmental ones. And so related with the energy efficiency, especially, and those are the most important for real estate valuation. The part of the S and the part of the G is not so important for this kind of valuation in most countries. In some countries, they are trying to apply something related with the S also for real estate, but especially it's the environmental part.
Coming towards real estate in itself, what do you think is one of the common misconceptions regarding valuations? One element is definitely there's no need. I buy real estate and I can just go to a broker and buy it. That's one element regarding the necessity. And then the other element is also maybe what the process normally looks like. And is there a general coherent process when I work with someone like you or any other certified appraiser?
Yeah, if you apply the European valuation standards, you have a process for that. It's pretty clear. The standards, you need to establish the terms of engagement with the client. You need to do the physical inspection of the property, to do the due diligence of the property, and then to apply all the methodologies that you think that are most suitable for what you are doing, and deliver a report, a full report. And our standards, they define all these stages of the process very clearly. And so if you are doing evaluation, applying AVS in Portugal, you expect a report, the same kind of report that you will get in Germany or in France or in Italy. So the process is pretty clear, and all the stages are parts of the standards.
How much does nowadays play data analytics and big data? On the one hand, you just mentioned the inspection of the property, really checking physically the property at hand, but then also I assume that you have some big data models and check certain elements of certain data in order to also make sure that you can value that property at a certain price. What's the combination there? Is that mainly physical? Is it mainly now done remotely and using big data?
That's a good question. In Europe, we can say that you have two different approaches for that issue, because you have what we call transparent countries and non-transparent countries. So in transparent countries, you have access to transactions, and it's something very easy. It's public data. So you have access to transactions. So you are really doing a comparison, a market comparison with the transactions that really occurred in a certain period of time. And you have all the details of the property, and you can really do a direct comparison with the property that you are doing the evaluation. But more than half of the countries in Europe don't have this system. We call it not fully transparent countries. In fact, probably most of them are non-transparent countries. And in those who don't have a direct access to transactions, this information is not public. For instance, we have here two countries, Portugal and Spain, with very different realities. In Spain, you have access to the transactions, and you have access to all this information. So it's what we call a transparent country for that matter. But in Portugal, you don't have that. You don't have access to the transactions. And so valuers base their valuation in the asking price. So that's the data that they are using to do the valuation. Of course, that you have access to you can buy information that gives you averages of the average transaction price for a specific area, and you can use also this data to help you in your valuation. But mainly you are basing your valuation in asking price. And if asking price is something different from transaction, because in the middle you have the negotiation process. And when we are doing when we are applying the comparison method, and this is the one that we use the most important one, the comparison methods. When we are doing the comparison with transactions, you still need to do the homogenization of the data that you have to try to compare, because it's very difficult to find two very equal properties. So you need to introduce a lot of factors to homogenize the data that you are using to compare your property. If you are using asking price, you need to add another factor, because you need to introduce also the negotiation. You need to study the market and try to understand what kind of discounts this property will have after negotiation. So what's the difference between the asking price and the real transaction price? So you are introducing another factor in the process. So if you are using asking price, you need to introduce a factor for the negotiation. So it's another factor that you are adding to your homogenization. And so It's what is possible to do in countries that are non-transparent, but it's not really the best scenario to do evaluation. But in the majority of the countries in Europe, or in the at least more than half of them, are using this methodology.
Now, thinking about, let's say, root cause problem solving, are there discussions regarding more transparency from a European Union political point of view and legal point of view? I'm looking at the USA. We have there the Zillow index, and we know exactly what's going on there. Do you think something like this will happen on a pan-European level so that you have more tools and full transparency regarding the data? Or do you think you will have to use other tools, other data analytics tools, and do your algorithms or extrapolations and discount a little bit the asking price by 10% because that's the normal negotiation price or what have you during the past 10 years or 20 years?
We have been trying to change something, and every time that we have the opportunity, we try to speak with the European institutions, trying to alert for this situation. We talk a lot about this usually in our conferences when we explain what is happening, especially if we have EU responsibles present. We try to come up with this issue and to explain the importance of transparency, but I don't think that in this moment this is something that we can consider a European strategy. I think this was left for each country to try to decide what they want to do. And I think that TEGOVA will continue to change something on the European level, but I think that here the local associations also have a role to play, and they need to continue the pressure over their own national governments to try to change things. Because when you try to explain to a national government that this is a very important issue and transparency is a very important issue, and this would increase all the quality of the data that valuers are using with all the consequences attached to it. When we are explaining this, they use, and I saw that not only in Portugal but in other countries, usually they are using the arguments of data protection and all the regulation related with that data protection. But the fact is that in other European countries that also have this kind of regulation and they need to comply with this kind of regulation, they are doing differently, and they are transparent, and the valuers have access directly to the transactions. So in some countries it's possible, and we are all under the same umbrella, the same regulation. If in some countries it's possible, in the others must be possible. So I think that the local associations have a very important role to play, and they need to press and to increase their pressure over the governments to try to resolve this.
During your experience of 30 years, what has been the most challenging project to appraise? I don't believe it's real estate. I would rather say it's definitely like a company or something like that. I don't know, like something where you would say, okay, we had to take so much of data, and it was maybe also stakeholder management, a political element. Can you talk like maybe about your experience there?
It's really a good question, and there's a lot of evaluations that I've done during the years that were very interesting, but maybe if I put my focus on these last 3 years, I would say that there was two valuations. One was a business valuation, the other was more a real estate valuation. Two valuations that were really interesting for a valuer, in the perspective of a valuer. They were technically very demanding, and it took me a lot of time to prepare it. I will give you the example. One was the valuation of a dam, a hydropower plant, so connected with the dam. I was instructed by a municipality. This municipality instructed me to do the valuation, the valuation of two dams with a hydro power plant attached to it, and they wanted this for fiscal purposes, and but it was a very specific situation because our tax law demands that these kind of valuations must be done using the cost approach, we had to develop new methodology. At the time, I don't know anybody that at the time had done this kind of evaluation before. So we had to come up with a new methodology to do this kind of evaluation. So it took us almost 1 year to prepare this evaluation because we had to study a lot how these systems work, these hydropower plants work. We spoke with a lot of specialists in Portugal related with this kind of assets. We've done a lot of research internationally trying to understand if others have done in the past this kind of evaluation. So we found two places in the United States and Brazil where they were confronted also with this kind of evaluation. So we had access to two reports, one in the United States and another in Brazil. And it was based in all this information that we come up with a methodology to do this evaluation. And it was really very interesting and very demanding, but because it took us almost 1 year to prepare all the methodology and to do the evaluation. And today, the tax authorities, they use the part of that methodology to do a national regulation for this kind of valuation. And we have been doing a lot of valuation now related with this kind of assets. So it was very interesting, but this was more a real estate valuation. The other example that I can give you, something very interesting also, it was a business valuation. I was asked to do the valuation of a company, a, a water bottle company in the center of the country. And I received the instruction from a bank, and they wanted to know the value of the assets of the company. They instructed us to do the valuation of the company, and especially the assets of the company, not just the factory, but also the lands in the mountains where they have the springs. And it was very interesting because we had to do the logic study of the springs. We had to understand if the amount of water that was coming out of the springs and the forecasts, considering the last 50 years of rain in the region, we had to do a forecast of the amount of water that was needed for the production of the factory and try to understand if it was enough for their needs or not. So it was a very unusual valuation because it involved also meteorology and evolved also some chemical knowledge because we had to study all the chemical analysis, the laboratory analysis that they had, try to understand if there was some sources of contamination that could affect the water and everything. So it was a very complete valuation and a very unique valuation because I will tell you, in 30 years, it was probably the third time that I did this kind of valuation. So it's not usual. And at this level, because they wanted to understand if the shortage of rain was affecting or not the springs and the quantity of water produced by the springs. At this level, it was really the first time that we did this kind of valuation. And so it was very challenging. It was very interesting. I'm just remember these two. Probably if I think a little bit more in this, I can remember a lot more. But I think that these two are good examples for you to understand the kind of expertise that we have for valuation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And now also towards the question regarding the skills and maybe also expertise, what you advise young professionals jumping into this profession and say, okay, because you're also giving lectures, you talk to many young people as well. What do you think is important for young professionals to succeed in this profession?
One of the main challenges in this moment in the valuation profession is really the ability to attract young people. That's a big factor because in this moment we are not attracting young people to this profession. Every time that I'm going to a conference in a lot of countries, I look to the audience, and it's unusual to see people below 40. Usually you see people over 40s. This is probably one of the main challenges for the profession in this moment, to attract young people. What can I say to young people? This profession brings something that it's quite unique. When you are doing evaluation, especially when you are doing more skilled valuations, you are always learning something and you are always facing something new, a different approach. even if you are doing the same kind of properties, for instance, if you are doing two factories or the valuation of two factories, you never have two situations that are completely equal. You are always facing new challenges, something new that you need to think how to approach. It's really a very interesting profession and a very challenging profession. In the other hand, I think it can be attractive for young people. To become a valuer, you need to have knowledge about a lot of different areas. In the examples that I was giving, you need to have knowledge about even chemical aspects to at least the basics. So it's really a profession where you are always learning and you are always being challenged to learn more and more. This is one of the things that I think that makes this profession so interesting. Of course, that in the other hand, maybe for younger people, the level of fees that are being paid to valuers are not probably very appealing. And maybe that's one of the factors that are contributing to this situation of young people don't want to become valuers. But this is not happening in all countries. For instance, I've been in Ireland the beginning of the year, just saying a few words in an opening course where a lot of people, about 30 or 40 people, were trying to become REV, recognized European valuers. And in that group, half of them, they were very young. So it was really interesting to see that young people in Ireland are interested in the profession. We don't have this kind of reality now in this moment in a lot of other countries, but Portugal is one of them. But if some of the countries are able to attract these young people, so I think that it's possible to do it in the other countries. It's just a matter of trying to understand how the others are doing and what kinds of strategy we need to implement in our countries.
I do believe that this profile and the job itself is very interesting and enriching because, as you say, you talk to many people, you find, and you're being exposed to many new industries. You have to make sure to quantify qualitative data from even interviews and trying to understand new materials, new industries, and also new geographies. So I do believe, and I totally think it is very appealing, to be honest. Paulo, I know your time is limited, and I would like to thank you for your conversation and for all the insights you have been giving us. You have been giving us a very nice introduction about TERRAVAL, about TEGOVA, about all the entire dynamics in the appraisal business. You gave us a very nice way of understanding the history, where we are coming from, and also right now the status from being very strongly focused on the physical unit, but also then being able to take data from big data sources and digital and understanding those elements, and then handing over the appraisal and the valuation for that respective unit. You also gave us a very good introduction regarding the European landscape and the work which TEGOVA does regarding the coherence of the REV and making sure that we are able to know what is behind this certification and this appraisal certificate and this badge everyone is holding. And I really appreciate the examples of your recent projects, which definitely sound both very challenging and mind-blowing, basically. I really appreciate that. And finally, you also gave us a very honest insight regarding the situation right now, regarding getting new talent, good talent, obviously, and also tips for them to thrive in this industry. Apart from those elements, is there anything else you would like to mention to the audience which we haven't touched upon?
We've touched the main aspects of the profession. As I was saying, to be a valuer is a profession very complete. As I was saying, that you need to be skilled in a lot of areas, you need to have knowledge in a lot of areas, and it's challenging. So I would like to say thank you for the invitation and the opportunity that you gave me to speak a little bit about TEGOVA and about this profession. That's one of the things that is quite important is for people to understand what we do, because sometimes I think that the public in general doesn't understand what a valuer does. We are a very important part, for instance, for the financial sector, but the majority of the people don't understand really the importance that we have. So to have these kind of conversations is always a pleasure, and it's very important to show to people the importance of our profession and what we really do on a day-by-day basis.
I'm the one thanking you. Thank you so much for your time. How can people reach out to you if they listened and are interested to make business with you?
If they need evaluation services, they can use our website, TERRAVAL, PT. They have all the contacts there. They can reach us there.
Perfect.
So,
I will put this into the show notes, into the description. And yeah, Paulo, thank you so much for your time today and sending the best regards.
Thank you, Michael. See you next time.
This video is brought to you by HalloCasa. Our tool transforms independent local real estate agents to global real estate agents. Create your own profile for free and get contacted by international investors. Sign up with the link in the description.